I sat in that lawyer's office, staring at the paper in my hands like it might change if I blinked hard enough. The deed to my dream home, except my name wasn't on it. Instead, bold black letters spelled out my brother's name, Eric Matthews, sole owner. My hand started shaking, and I had to set the document down before I crumpled it. The lawyer cleared his throat awkwardly, shuffling papers while Eric leaned back in his chair across from me. That smirk on his face, I'll never forget it. Cool, confident, like he'd just won a game I didn't even know we were playing. "Don't worry, sis," he said, voice dripping with fake concern. "I'll take care of everything." My throat burned with words I couldn't say. Screaming wouldn't help. Crying wouldn't either. So I forced my face into something blank, something neutral, even though inside I was falling apart. He'd stolen it. My brother had actually stolen my house. The wraparound porch I'd dreamed about since I was 12. The kitchen I'd designed tile by tile, choosing every detail. All of it gone. And he sat there smiling. I barely remember leaving that office. My legs moved on autopilot, carrying me to my car in the parking lot. The moment I sat in the driver's seat, something broke inside me. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, my whole body shaking. Tears blurred my vision until I couldn't see the dashboard anymore. I whispered the words out loud, needing to hear them to make them real. He stole my home. My voice cracked. How could he do this? We grew up together. We shared birthday cakes and holiday dinners. He taught me how to ride a bike when I was 6. And now this. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel, letting the tears come. Every sacrifice I'd made flashed through my mind like a cruel highlight reel. The years of eating ramen and skipping vacations. The extra shifts at the diner until my feet ached. Selling Grandma's pearl necklace, the one she'd left me in her will. All of it for that house. All of it stolen by the person I trusted most. Let me back up. My name is Natalie Matthews, and I'm 29 years old. I grew up in a small town in Indiana, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and dreams feel either too big or too small. I was always the quiet one in my family, the one who observed more than she spoke. After high school, I knew I couldn't afford college, so I worked. 2 jobs, sometimes 3. I waited tables at Murphy's Diner during the day and cleaned offices at night. Every paycheck went straight into my savings account, except for the bare minimum I needed for rent and food. People thought I was crazy. My friends invited me to concerts and beach trips, but I always said no. They didn't understand. I had a vision, a white house with a wraparound porch, big windows that let in morning light, and a kitchen where I could finally learn to bake properly. That house wasn't just wood and nails to me. It was proof that someone like me, someone without a college degree or rich parents, could build something beautiful. Eric was different. 3 years older than me, he was the golden child. Tall, confident, always knew what to say to make people like him. Our parents adored him. At family dinners, Dad would clap him on the shoulder and brag about his business sense. Eric worked in real estate, or at least that's what he told everyone. He flipped houses, made deals, knew all the right people. When I finally saved enough for a down payment, Eric was the first person I told. I was so excited I could barely sit still. We were at Mom and Dad's house for Sunday dinner, and I just blurted it out, "I'm buying a house." Everyone cheered. Eric raised his glass and said, "That's amazing, Nat, really proud of you." Then, quieter, he leaned over and added, "Let me help with the paperwork. I've done this a million times. It'll save you money and stress." I should have known better, but he was my brother. Family was supposed to mean safety. The first red flag came at the signing. We sat in a stuffy office with mountains of paperwork spread across the table. The real estate agent kept pointing to lines where I needed to sign, explaining things in that fast, professional voice that made everything sound official and boring. Eric sat beside me, relaxed, occasionally nodding like he understood everything perfectly. When I asked a question about one of the forms, Something about the title transfer. Eric waved it off. It's all standard stuff, Nat. Just trust me. He smiled that charming smile, the one that made our mom melt. I hesitated, pen hovering over the paper. Something in my gut twisted, a tiny voice whispering that I should read everything more carefully. But the agent was waiting, Eric was watching, and I felt stupid for not understanding legal language. So I signed. I signed everything he told me to sign. That moment would haunt me for months. Walking through the finished house for the first time should have been the happiest day of my life. The walls were the exact shade of cream I'd chosen. The countertops gleamed granite, not the cheap laminate I'd grown up with. I ran my fingers along the smooth surface, imagining all the meals I'd prepare there. The porch stretched wide, perfect for a swing and some potted plants. I could already picture myself reading there on Sunday mornings with coffee. But Eric walked through the house like he owned it, which I would soon discover he did. He pointed out features to me like I was a guest. Nice backsplash, right? I made sure they got the grout color perfect. Not we. The word stuck in my mind like a splinter. When I mentioned that I'd picked out that backsplash, he just laughed and said, "Yeah, good eye." Something cold settled in my stomach, but I pushed it away. I was being paranoid. This was my house. Our house. Everything was fine. The truth started creeping out at the family gathering 3 weeks later. We all met at Mom and Dad's for dinner. Me, Eric, our parents, Aunt Karen, Uncle Tom, and my cousin Megan. Over roast chicken and mashed potatoes, Eric started talking. "Yeah, just closed on my new place," he said, casually cutting his meat. "Took a lot of work, but it was worth it." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. My place? Aunt Karen gushed about how proud she was. Dad raised his glass for a toast. I tried to speak up to correct him, but my voice came out small. "Eric, you mean our," he cut me off smoothly like he'd been expecting it. "Don't exaggerate, Nat. I know you helped out a little, but let's be real." The table laughed. Actually laughed. Like I'd made a joke. My face burned with humiliation. Megan glanced at me, concern in her eyes, but everyone else had already moved on to another topic. I sat there, food turning to ash in my mouth, realizing that something was very, very wrong. After dinner, I cornered Eric in the kitchen. My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice low. "What did you mean back there? That's my house, Eric. I paid for it." He dried a dish slowly, not even looking at me. When he finally turned, his expression was cold, colder than I'd ever seen it. "You were never ready to own a place, Nat. Too naive. Too emotional." He set the dish down carefully. "Be grateful I let you live there at all. Most brothers wouldn't be so generous." My nails dug into my palms, leaving little half-moon marks. Every instinct screamed at me to slap him, to scream, to make a scene. But we were in our parents' house with our whole family just in the next room. So I did the only thing I could do. I walked away. My legs felt like rubber, and my vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. Not yet. Not where he could see. Back in my tiny rented apartment, the one I'd planned to leave, I finally let myself fall apart. I collapsed onto my bed, pressing my face into the pillow to muffle the sobs. Everything hurt. My chest, my throat, my eyes. The dream I'd worked toward for nearly 10 years was gone. Stolen by someone who was supposed to protect me. I thought about giving up. Maybe Eric was right. Maybe I was too naive for this world. I could move away, start over somewhere else, forget Indiana and my family and that beautiful house with the wraparound porch. For hours, I lay there in the dark, letting despair wash over me. But then, somewhere around midnight, something shifted. The sadness hardened into something else. Something sharp and cold and focused. I sat up, wiping my face with the back of my hand. Eric wanted to play games? Fine. I'd play. But I'd play smarter. The next morning, I woke up with a new purpose. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and created a new folder on my desktop. Evidence. Then I started digging. Bank statements first. I printed out every transfer I'd made for the house, The down payment, the inspection fees, the closing costs. Thousands of dollars, all with my name on them. Then I went through my text messages, scrolling back months to find conversations with Eric. There a message from June where he wrote, "Don't worry, sis. We'll both be on the deed. Equal partners." Screenshot. Save. Another from July. "Your investment is safe with me. This is our house." Screenshot. Save. I worked methodically, organizing everything by date and category. Receipts for materials I'd bought. Emails with contractors I'd hired. Photos I'd taken during construction. My handwriting visible on notes about paint colors and fixture choices. The folder grew. Every piece of evidence was a weapon I'd use later. The hardest part was pretending. At the next family barbecue, I smiled. I laughed at Uncle Tom's bad jokes. When Eric told a story about his house, I nodded along like nothing was wrong. Inside, though, every word he spoke fueled the fire burning in my chest. He bragged about the smart investment he'd made, how property values in the area were rising. Aunt Karen asked him for real estate advice. Dad clapped him on the back and called him a real businessman. I sipped my lemonade and watched. Patience. That's what this required. I'd spent years saving for that house. I could spend months, even years, getting it back. Eric had made his first mistake. He thought I was weak. He thought I'd accept his story and slink away. He had no idea who he was dealing with. 2 months after I discovered the truth, the first crack in Eric's armor appeared. I was at Murphy's Diner, working my shift, when a regular customer named Bethany sat at the counter. We'd always been friendly, and she knew I had a brother named Eric. That day, she leaned over her coffee cup and said, "Hey, isn't your brother Eric Matthews?" I nodded, already feeling uneasy. "Yeah, why?" She hesitated, then said, "My husband works with someone who knows him. They were at a bar last weekend, and Eric was bragging about some business deal. Said his sister was dumb enough to hand over money without reading the paperwork." My face went hot. Bethany looked genuinely concerned. "I'm sorry, Natalie. I thought you should know." I thanked her, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. The moment my shift ended, I went to my car and wrote down everything she'd said, word for word with the date and time. Another piece of evidence. Another nail in Eric's coffin. Megan called me a week later. "We need to talk," she said, her voice serious. We met at a coffee shop downtown, tucked into a corner booth. Megan was Eric's cousin too, but we'd always been close. She looked around nervously before leaning in. "I know the truth, Nat. About the house." My heart jumped. "How?" She pulled out her phone and showed me screenshots of bank transfers, payments from me to Eric, all labeled with notes like house down payment and closing costs. "I help Mom with her bookkeeping," Megan explained. "She asked me to look at some family financial stuff, and I saw these. Eric told everyone you barely contributed, but these numbers don't lie." Relief flooded through me. Finally, someone believed me. "Will you testify if it comes to that?" I asked. Megan grabbed my hand. "Absolutely. What he did is disgusting." I added her name to my growing list of allies. The net was tightening around Eric, and he didn't even know it. Eric threw a housewarming party in October. The invitation came in our family group chat, celebrating my new place. Drinks, food, and good company. Saturday at 7. I stared at the message, fury and strategy warring in my mind. Part of me wanted to skip it, to refuse to participate in his charade. But the smarter part, the part that had been quietly building my case for months, knew I needed to go. I needed to see him celebrate, to watch him bask in his stolen glory. It would fuel me for what was coming. The party was everything I'd imagined. String lights on the porch, my porch. People laughing in the kitchen, my kitchen. Eric played the gracious host, giving tours and accepting compliments. At one point, he raised his glass and made a toast. To family who always supports me. Everyone cheered. I raised my glass too, my face frozen in a smile. but my heart pounded with a different emotion. Not agreement. Strategy. While everyone else enjoyed the party, I excused myself to use the bathroom. Instead, I did something I'd been planning for weeks. I knew Eric kept a home office upstairs. He'd mentioned it during the tour. I slipped up quietly, my heart racing. The office was unlocked. Inside, I found his filing cabinet also unlocked. Eric's arrogance was astounding. I quickly photographed documents, receipts, invoices, bank statements. And then I found it, a ledger showing money he'd borrowed from our parents. Thousands of dollars, supposedly for house repairs. Repairs that never happened. I'd been there during the entire construction process. There were no emergency repairs. Eric had scammed our parents too. I took photos of everything, hands shaking with adrenaline. Then I slipped back downstairs, rejoined the party, and smiled at Eric across the room. He had no idea what I'd just done. No idea that his lies were documented in my phone, ready to destroy him. Thanksgiving dinner was in November. The whole family gathered around Mom and Dad's long dining table, laden with turkey and all the traditional sides. Between bites of stuffing, I casually dropped a bomb. Mom, remember when I paid for the closing costs on the house? That was almost $30,000. I said it lightly, like I was just making conversation, but the table went silent. Forks stopped moving. Eric's face froze, his hand gripping his knife a little too tight. Mom blinked. 30,000? Eric, I thought you said. It's complicated, Eric interrupted, forcing a laugh. Nat's exaggerating. You know how she is. But Dad was frowning now, looking between us. Natalie doesn't usually exaggerate about money. The seed was planted. Doubt, small but real, flickered in my parents' eyes. Eric glared at me across the table, but I just smiled sweetly and asked if anyone wanted more cranberry sauce. The conversation moved on, but the damage was done. The foundation of Eric's lies had its first crack. A week after Thanksgiving, I sat in another lawyer's office. This time, though, I was the one in control. I'd contacted a real estate attorney named Philip Brennan, recommended by a friend of a friend. He was in his 50s, sharp-eyed, with a reputation for winning difficult cases. I'd brought everything. My folder of evidence, printed and organized in a binder. Bank statements, text messages, emails, photographs, witness statements from Megan and Bethany. Even the documents I'd photographed at Eric's party. Philip went through it methodically, his expression growing more impressed with each page. Finally, he leaned back in his chair and said, Ms. Matthews, you have a case. A very strong case. My hands were shaking with relief. Can we win? Based on what you've shown me? Yes. Your brother committed fraud. The paper trail proves you financed this property. We can challenge the deed. I left his office feeling lighter than I had in months. The wheels of justice were slow, but they were starting to turn. Christmas was tense. We all gathered at the house, Eric's house, my house, the house that was the center of everything wrong in our family. Dad pulled Eric aside after dinner. I was in the kitchen, supposedly washing dishes, but I could hear their conversation through the doorway. Your sister says she paid for this house, Eric. Most of it. Eric's laugh sounded forced. Dad, come on. She helped a little, sure, but she showed me bank statements, Dad interrupted. His voice was harder than I'd ever heard it. Transfers. Receipts. That's not helping a little. Silence. Then Eric, defensive. It's complicated. The real estate stuff, the legal work I did, it's worth more than just money. Is her name on the deed? Dad asked. More silence. I smiled into the dishwater. The family that had blindly supported Eric for years was finally asking questions. The golden child's shine was starting to tarnish, and I hadn't even filed the lawsuit yet. Eric stormed into Murphy's Diner 2 days after Christmas. I was wiping down tables at the end of my shift when he marched up, his face red with anger. We need to talk. Now. I glanced at my manager, who nodded and followed Eric outside. In the parking lot, he grabbed my arm, not hard enough to hurt, but aggressive enough to make his point. "You're going to ruin everything," he hissed. "All this digging, talking to lawyers, turning Mom and Dad against me. Back off, Natalie. I'm serious." I looked down at his hand on my arm, then up at his face. For the first time in months, I let him see the coldness I'd been hiding. I pulled my arm free slowly, deliberately. "I'm not doing anything except keeping records, Eric. Why would that bother you? Unless you have something to hide." His face went pale. For a moment, he looked scared. Good. He should be. "This won't end well for you," he threatened. I turned and walked back into the diner, leaving him standing there. The lawsuit was filed in January. Philip Brennan submitted all the evidence we'd gathered, along with a formal complaint alleging fraud, breach of trust, and misrepresentation. Eric received the notice on a Tuesday. I know because Megan called me, barely able to contain her excitement. He got served at work. Everyone saw. He looked like he was going to throw up. By Sunday dinner, the news had spread through the entire family. Whispers followed Eric wherever he went. Lawsuit, ownership dispute, fraud. The words hung in the air like smoke. Eric tried to act normal, but his hand shook when he poured wine. His confidence, once so unshakable, had developed cracks. Mom pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Is this really necessary, Natalie? He's your brother." I looked at her steadily. "He stole from me, Mom. Would you let someone steal from you just because you shared blood?" She didn't have an answer. The family wasn't united behind Eric anymore. Doubt had become suspicion. Suspicion was becoming belief. The mediation happened in March in a sterile conference room with fluorescent lights and uncomfortable chairs. Eric sat on one side with his lawyer, a nervous-looking man who kept adjusting his tie. I sat on the other side with Philip, my binder of evidence stacked neatly on the table. The mediator, a gray-haired woman named Ms. Porter, opened the session by explaining the process. Then it was our turn to present. Philip laid it out methodically. Bank transfers showing I'd paid for 80% of the house. Text messages where Eric promised me joint ownership. Emails proving my involvement in every decision. Photographs showing my handwriting on construction notes. Witness statements from Megan and Bethany. By the time Philip finished, Eric was sweating. His lawyer tried to sputter excuses. My client provided valuable expertise. There was a verbal agreement about compensation, but Ms. Porter's raised eyebrow said it all. She'd seen through Eric's lies in less than an hour. I sat quietly, watching Eric's carefully constructed story fall apart. This was better than I'd imagined. The family fallout was swift and brutal. After the mediation, word spread about what the evidence showed. Mom and Dad confronted Eric at Sunday dinner, demanding answers. He tried to explain, to justify, but his excuses sounded hollow. Megan publicly confirmed everything I'd claimed, her testimony carrying weight because she'd always been neutral in family disputes. Aunt Karen, who'd praised Eric's business sense for years, stopped talking to him. Uncle Tom demanded Eric repay the money he'd borrowed from our parents under false pretenses. The golden child's pedestal had crumbled. Eric sat at the dinner table, alone in a crowd, as family members shot him disappointed looks. Dad, who'd always defended him, couldn't meet his eyes. Mom cried quietly in the kitchen. The man who'd stolen my house had lost something more valuable than property. He'd lost his reputation, his family's trust, and his pride. And we weren't even done yet. The final ruling came in April. Ms. Porter determined that based on the financial evidence, I held the majority stake in the property, approximately 80% ownership. Eric's name could remain on the deed, but I had the legal right to live there and make all decisions about the property. More importantly, I had the right to buy out his minority stake. Philip smiled when he told me the news. "You won, Natalie. Completely." Eric tried to appeal, but his lawyer advised against it. The evidence was too strong. So we moved to the next phase, the buyout. I offered him $20,000 for his 20% stake, far below market value, but he had no leverage. Philip made it clear that if Eric refused, we could pursue criminal fraud charges. Eric had two choices: accept my offer and walk away with something, or fight and risk losing everything, including his freedom. He took the money. 2 weeks later, I had the deed revised with my name as sole owner. The house was finally legally completely mine. Eric moved out on a rainy Saturday in May. I watched from the porch, my porch, as he loaded boxes into a moving truck. He'd aged in the past year. His face looked haggard, his shoulders slumped. The confidence that had once defined him was gone, replaced by the weight of his own greed and stupidity. He'd lost the house, his reputation, and most of his family relationships. The money he'd taken from our parents had to be repaid. His real estate business, already shaky, collapsed when clients heard about the lawsuit. He was broke, humiliated, and essentially homeless, moving into a cramped apartment across town. As the truck pulled away, I felt no triumph, no joy. Just a quiet, solid satisfaction. Justice wasn't loud or flashy. It was this: watching someone who'd thought themselves untouchable face the consequences of their own arrogance. Eric had gambled that I was too weak to fight back. He'd lost. I'm sitting on my porch now, coffee in hand, watching the morning sun paint the sky orange and pink. It's been 6 months since Eric moved out. The house is decorated the way I always imagined. Plants hanging from the porch beams. A cozy swing with cushions I sewed myself. Wind chimes that tinkle in the breeze. Inside, my kitchen smells like the banana bread I'm learning to bake. Every room reflects my choices, my taste, my dreams. Was it worth it? The year of gathering evidence, the stress of the lawsuit, the family drama that still hasn't fully healed? Yes, absolutely yes. Because here's what I learned. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any other wound. When someone who's supposed to protect you chooses to hurt you instead, it breaks something fundamental. But it also reveals something important. You're stronger than you think, smarter than they believe. And the best revenge isn't screaming or violence. It's patience, proof, and watching arrogance collapse under the weight of its own lies. Eric thought he could steal my dream. Instead, he taught me that I'm capable of fighting for what's mine. And that's a lesson worth more than any house.